Batman and Robin, Year 1, Issue 5. Mark Waid writing with Chris Samnee on the art.
You can tell when Wade is inspired. It comes across the page. He has Bruce use Wayne as a verb.
I popped at that. I thought that was great.
Me too.
Yeah,
because I had
great.
to go back and read it, and I was like, is this a miss? Like, was this supposed to be another word? And then you get to the point where Alfred points it out, and you're like, oh, God, okay. Clever. I like it.
This was so good. And it's yeah, I think Shazam was my favorite thing Wade had done since returning to DC. I think it's now number 2. I think this is number 1 and Shazam's number 2. I think just he nails the relationship with Bruce and Dick. You know, the issue starts with Dick apparently got thrown out in the first day, not permanently, but he basically got pulled into the principal's office because he argued with a teacher. And we find out that the argument he had with the teacher is that the teacher referred to the class, because it was being rowdy, as acting like a circus. And Dick took umbrage with this term and referred to it as a slur. And I think Bruce is like, it's not a slur, Dick, it's just an expression. He's like, well, you've never lived in a circus. Yeah. You don't get to make that distinction. And I'm like, you know what, he's got a point. Like, Dick's got more of a right to say this than he does.
Well, we say that, but when you understand what a circus is, it has to be super organized, right? Everyone has their part to play, but it feels like it's zany and free flowing. So I understand where Dick's coming from, but Bruce having the time and place argument with him, it feels very spot on for this age.
Yeah. Also just the idea that, okay, even if he has slightly a point in some way, you can tell that he was latching onto it because it's an excuse to ruin all the school ideas and just
exactly.
Go home. You know, so he's playing the game. And even when he goes with Batman to see Gordon with the signals on, Gordon's like, oh, I want to talk without the child, and Batman's like, of course, Robin, wait over there. So he's like just slouching over at the rail, just looking pissed off that he's been left out. As Batman and Gordon have a chat, and Batman is kind of aware that Gordon was hiding a file from Batman, and Gordon just asks him to trust them and focus on what they need. But they're talking about Grimraldi and the fact that Grimraldi's using someone who can mimic other people. So we know it's Clayface, of course, but they don't really have that concept yet. But he does say that they've got a name, and it's not Carlo. It's I'm assuming this is what, like, the Golden Age Clayface, maybe, or
I'm guessing, because it's not Basil Carlo. It's
I didn't recognize it, but I assume it is been taken from like a classic version of Clayface. So it sends Robin home because he has to go be Bruce Wayne for a bit. But it turns out he's being Bruce Wayne because he suspects that this rich guy who's leaving town and throwing this party, he just like sold off all of his company, and it's kind of weird and didn't make much sense. So he suspects that it's foul play, and that this imposter who can mimic people is actually pretending to be this guy, and that's why he's at the party. So he keeps an eye on him. He mingles a little bit, but then he's also there as Batman after the party ends, and he's like, yeah, this guy's so smug that he would keep up the act of being the happy host even when no one's looking, but he immediately changes his demeanor. It's a very specific thing that he points out, but I generally liked it because it was a nice little, because we didn't really know until this point why Bruce was at this party. It's this moment when like this guy like says bye to the last guest, and you see Batman's shadow in the background, and you're like, oh, he's here because this is Clayface. Yep. And it's like a moment of excitement.
Looks like Oswald's there too. If you look on the top of that big panel, there's a guy in a top hat, right? Kind of hunched over.
Oh yeah, I see him. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. You know,
it makes sense.
So it's like all the mucky mucks of Gotham, right? So yeah.
No, that's fun stuff.
So real quick, so I just pulled up Clayface, right, through Google. He's actually the second Clayface, right? The first was created by Bob Kane and Bill Finger in Detective Comics 40. So, pretty soon. It was from June 1940. And the second one was in the 50s, and his name was Matthew Hagen, a treasure hunter given vast shape-shifting powers and resiliency by exposure to a pool of radioactive protoplasm. So again, Mark Waid digging deep here. But for all intents and purposes, this feels like the Clayface that we're all famous with.
Yeah, that
familiar with when we get there.
Yeah, that first one was just over a year after Batman debuted, so that was very early.
Yeah, which I did not know. I did not realize that that's how long the Basil version of Clayface has been around, and his name is a send up to Boris Karloff and Basil Rathbone, right? So that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Turns out this guy, the real guy, is dead in the closet, and that's why they're doing this whole "I'm leaving town and moving to Italy" plot that he's talking about. So Batman shows up behind him and says, "Over, Hagen." It's classic Batman. And I love this entire series of set pieces that happened here, because Batman chases him and he's hiding in the closet behind the mirror, and he fires out a gun at Batman. And during this whole time, Alfred's trying to contact him because Robin snuck out with the bike and is out on his own doing whatever. But Batman has to try and fight Clayface, right? And he does a whole thing with the Batarang with the zip line attached, where he lassos it around his leg. But to his shock, and I love the art here, Batman's just what? Because the foot just gets cut off, and there's no blood because it's Clayface, and he's like, "What the hell?" He's like, "A prosthetic? What? That doesn't make sense." And then what's even weirder, of course, to Batman is that he just has the foot reattach, and he's like, "Wait, huh?"
Samnee's face for Bruce here is so good.
It's just wonderful. This is why we do get every so often you get a great early days story with usually Batman, but it can happen with any hero, because there's something really interesting to telling the story of how these characters encountered these villains for the first time, especially these characters who have been around for so long that you kind of have to go back to at least the Silver Age for a lot of the first encounters, if not the Golden Age. And comics were very different back then. It's really cool to get a modern, well-written take on how the first time Batman encounters Clayface is. In this moment here, when he goes to grab him, and he's wearing this mask that he's got on over his face, and he just starts oozing clay out of the eye holes and around the mask. It is a classic horror movie visual. It's gorgeous.
Yeah. Well, and the way that he drops it onto Bruce too, it looks, like Bruce's entire upper torso is covered by it.
Yeah.
On that next one. Yeah, it's very gross.
And he's it's not even warm. It feels like clay. So he's just kind of putting it together. But meanwhile, Robin has spotted some criminals, to be fair, the criminals spotted Robin first, and said, "Hey, he's on his own. Let's take him. We can take him back to Grimaldi." So Robin does kind of fall for the trap and tries to grab them, and does a pretty good job though, where he's like, "Oh, this was a trap. I'm still going to beat you guys up because I'm Robin." But there's more of them lying in wait. They've really tried to prepare for this, and ultimately his attempts are futile, and he gets hit in the back of the head with a bat and gets knocked out. So it was, again, really fun art here. The panels, there's a lot of angled panels to give you a sense of the high energy of Dick flipping around and jumping and kicking and all that. It does a really good job of emulating that in the style. So yeah, that happens. We go back to the Batman Clayface stuff, and Clayface just he keeps oozing more and more until he's going into a puddle, and then, but he's still kind of got a core shape of a human, right? That's still grabbing Batman. So Batman's ditch effort here is that he grabs the line to the Batarang that was on the floor, and just yanks it up, and it splits Clayface in two. So we get another great horror movie visual of Clayface split into two halves. Yep. It's so
from
good.
The top down.
Yeah, it's what's so good about it is that this is allowing Batman to do things that are kind of really violent without it having any consequences, because it's Clayface and he's just he's putty. It doesn't matter.
Right. The first one with the foot was by accident, right? He's trying to trip him up. This one was how do you cut clay? Oh, with a wire. Right, and that's effectively what he does.
But they do the classic horror movie thing where when Batman turns around after he's been dealing with stuff, Clayface is just gone. He's vanished. So really cool. I love how they've the reveal that Clayface is involved at the end of issue 1 or 2, whatever that was so exciting, and then everything they've done so far with Batman encountering him, I think, has been really, really cool. So I really liked all this stuff in the issue. Of course, eventually he talks to Alfred and is like, wait, what did you want me for? It's like, oh yeah, Robin's been taken. So the final page is Robin's with Grimraldi, and he's obviously he's got a bit of a mouth on him because he's Robin.
Mm-hmm.
And Grimraldi's like, you know what? You're lucky I don't hurt children. However, I don't mind using them as bait on a hook. So now you could of course read that as he's going to literally like feed them to a shark. I think that what he's actually saying though is that he's going to use them as bait for the Batman.
Well, yeah, and I like that it shows that Grimaldi's different, right? Is that it's kind of like in The Godfather where they say that, you know, they're going to sell drugs to kids. Kids are innocent, you know? And it's like here, he's like, yeah, you're a kid, you've been a thorn on my side. I'm not going to hurt you, but you do have a value, right? And he's going to use them to lure Batman out. So I do like it shows that he does have some morals, which, you know, in Gotham is quite different for the criminals.
Yeah, no, I think it's fun. Because what I like about this is that, you know, Bruce and Dick's relationship's kind of strained at the minute because of the school stuff and everything that they've been going through. And I like here that we get the 1-2 punch of Batman's concerned about him, so he wants to come and save him, but also this entire situation's only happened because Dick did something stupid and got himself caught. So it's his fault, and that's going to further strain the relationship. So be very curious to see how that plays out over the next issue or two.
Yeah. And all the stuff with Alfred too, like Alfred, I feel like Alfred's gonna have to step in here and teach Bruce how to parent. You know? Because there's that whole thing where he's like, did you just use Wayne as a verb? And it's Alfred getting progressively more irritated with Bruce as this goes, because he's not thinking like he has this kid he needs to take care of too.
The context for that line, because we mentioned that a couple of times, is that basically Bruce says that he had to Wayne the principal to make sure this didn't go on his permanent record. So, yes. Now, whether that means paying him or just having the Bruce Wayne charm, open to interpretation, but...
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, one of those. All right, what are you giving Batman and Robin Year 1, issue 5?
I'm going to give this a 9.
9.5.
Ooh, look at that.
I loved it. Everything with his first encounter with Clayface was great. The relationship with Dick and Batman's great. Cliffhanger's solid. Yeah, I have nothing. And Samnee's art is just, you know,
top notch.
Yeah, it's gorgeous throughout. Super noir. You know, that final page where it's just all the blinds behind them as he's looking down at Dick. Just, you know, oozing atmosphere. All the monster stuff with Clayface is great. Yeah, just it's great.